Good morning, guys. Today we have the moon moving into Pisces. The sun is, of course, in Gemini. This is your lunar lowdown. Let's get into it. So before we get into today's lunar lowdown, I did want to ask, because I was at a perfumery workshop yesterday and the owner of the studio asked me how I was dealing with the planetary energies and that she was just feeling like a lot of shifts. And I was like, absolutely. My spidey senses have been off the charts for the past week. I just cannot tell if this is more of a personal thing where I can feel like something is coming, or if I feel like something is coming collectively. That is what I can't nail down, but something is definitely coming. So I just want to ask how many other people are also feeling that. But let's get into the lunar lowdown. So we have the sun in Gemini, the moon in Pisces, and the moon in Pisces is ruled by Jupiter in Cancer. That's making an active square to Saturn in Aries. Now, today, the moon in Pisces is not making any aspects to anything. And so what we're seeing is the moon in Pisces do its moon in Pisces thing. Energetically, it is making a square to the sun in Gemini, but it won't be exact until tomorrow. Editing Micah here. Actually, that's not true. The moon in Pisces is making aspects to all of the planets in Taurus as well as Cancer. And so that is just adding to, I don't want to be around people. I want to stay in my comfort zone kind of thing, which Jupiter in Cancer square Saturn in Aries can inadvertently be pushing you outside your comfort zone. And so just keep in mind today, as the moon is in Pisces, we're getting a lot of that like daydreamy, pleasure-filled, I just kind of want to be doing my own thing and not really engaging with too much chaos. That is all of that energy today. However, when we move into tomorrow, things shift a bit. So for tomorrow, what we see is the sun in Gemini wants to talk. It wants to be busy. It wants to get information, spread information. And so we can see a lot of stuff with the media happening that are a bit deceptive, especially when it has to do with photos, screens, all the things, just things that maybe you have only part of the story on, since Gemini is also going to be about duality. And let's be honest, Pisces is just the water version of Gemini, but also that busy mental energy that the sun in Gemini gives when it squares up against the moon in Pisces tomorrow. What we can see is one, a lot of daydreaming because there's a lot of mental energy, but also what we can see is a lot of push and pull when it comes to expressing our feelings. Now, let's get into the meat of that moon in Pisces by talking about Jupiter in Cancer, making that square to Saturn in Aries. Also, when we're talking about Pisces energy, there's almost like this mob mentality that comes from Pisces energy. This is why when we're talking about Pisces energy, a lot of times when we're talking about spirituality and religion, we can easily get into like cult territory. And Jupiter in Cancer can be extreme or like an expansion on patriotism. Saturn in Aries can be lawlessness. So I'll let you guys put those puzzle pieces together on what I'm talking about. But I say that because we're going to be in this energy for the next couple of weeks. But other than that, what we can see is Jupiter in Cancer, it wants to create something, but it also wants to find where it's home. Where do I feel emotionally and physically safe? Saturn in Aries can be reckless, but it can also be about defining who you are. What is your own power? What action are you taking? Is it strategic or not? And Cancer can be a bit of a wanderer. So when Jupiter is there, it only expands on that wandering. And so essentially what that square is asking is, who are you? And do you have a plan for the actions that you're trying to create, or are you just figuring it out as you go? And if you are, you need to sit your little ass down, because you will expend less energy if you go ahead and just figure out what needs to be done in the step-by-step process, rather than just going with the flow sometimes. I know some people are going to be so upset with me for saying that, but sometimes that really does expend less energy, is if you just strategize rather than going with the flow 100% of the time. Because sometimes you don't know where the flow is going. If the flow is going into a riptide, and so there is a need to define you from the rest of the people around you, with the moon being in Pisces, but also Jupiter in Cancer. We have to remember that Cancer is also ruled by the moon. The moon doesn't have its own light. It gets its light from the sun. But we can also struggle to see where we can feel safe with other people emotionally. Cancer is also a lot about family and privacy. It's also going to be about women in part. And the moon in Pisces can be about older people. And so this has a lot to do with family, especially when it comes to creating boundaries with family as well. And with Neptune also being in Aries, that will be the next square that Jupiter is going to create, is going to be with Neptune in Aries. It's about dissolving those expectations, but it can also be about flushing out what is not needed in order to build up something a bit more solid when it comes to boundaries with relationships to parents, family, and just creating, again, your own identity. You're building up your own empire here. But other than that, that's all I have for you guys today. If you guys enjoyed this Lunar Lowdown, please let me know. I would love to hear from you. How are you guys feeling about like the energy that's happening right now? Not just like for this Lunar Lowdown, but in general. Are your spidey senses also going on? And of course, if you would like to get any consultations with me, you can head on over to EdenIAstro.com. The website is back up. I just had to do a little bit of tinkering with it. But yeah, other than that, I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye.